So we're like, okay. He says, we got real world vector and they're going to send us out to the west. So picture if it's, if you got a clock, the Nimitz is in the middle. We're a little bit south of that, about 40 miles south. And then the Marines are about 100 miles south of the ship, about 60 miles between the two of us. So as this is all happening, my wingman is joining up. And these are F-18F, so there's two people in each jet. So it's me and my Wizzo, which is weapon systems operator, and I've got the other pilot and the weapon systems operator in the other jet. So they tell us all this, hey, we're going to real-world vector, and they send us out 270, about 60 miles away from where we're going. So now we're going out even further out to sea. We have no idea what we're intercepting, and this is when the controller starts talking to us. He says, hey, sir, we've seen these objects. For 2 weeks, they've been coming down, and he's giving us the whole story. He says, we need you to go investigate. We want to know what these are. So,
but they're asking you to investigate in a jet that's unarmed.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no... And there's reasons for that we don't fly. We typically don't fly with live ordnance unless we're actually going into like a combat zone or we're on a training range and we're going to shoot something. And the reason is you can go through history of the Navy or Air Force. If you put live missiles on airplanes and then you start doing training where you're squeezing the trigger, someone always messes the switchology up and someone gets shot down. It's happened multiple times. So we don't do it. There's times that we do that's rare. So we start flying out to the west. Now, I want you to think, because the other pilot has when you talk to, it's out there, it was a female. When you talk to her, here's the kind of goes through the mindset of, hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot. And so the other jet is on my left-hand side. And I'm going to go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're going to end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock. And we are at the 6 o'clock position. And my wingman is off to my left side. So she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm, no white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see whitewater, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over it and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the west. So you got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, oh, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wizzo in the other airplane comes up and says, hey, skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white tic-tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the whitewater that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why you say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes. It's not sensors.
Welcome in, Gage. How are you doing?
So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. If you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that it's really in the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes.
Not overly small. An airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. And that's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here, and I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views. And the other airplane will kind of have a god's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just in a nice, easy descent. A reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can easily put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about, 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface, we're up high, we're coming down, it starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle, I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle, nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it, and I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle, and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be, because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate, and within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof, and it's gone. So I call the other airplane, and I said, hey, do you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay. And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So we don't see it. We're looking. At the same time, I say, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. Was there something there? So we turn around. We're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly. There's no white water, nothing. It's just blue.